Hi, this is Alex, your AI-generated host for another exciting interview here at AMC Presents. Glad you're back. Let's dive in. Today, William Ford, AMC creator, chats with Matthew Guard, artistic director of Skylark Vocal Ensemble. This US-based professional choir is known for its captivating performances and unique programming. Under Matthew's direction, Skylark is recognized for its exquisite vocal blend and innovative choral music style. Matthew Guard, a three-time Grammy nominee, is gaining a reputation as an innovative and thoughtful figure in American choral music. He passionately communicates something unique in every concert and recording. Matthew thoroughly researches each piece to craft concerts and programs that captivate audiences with hidden connections and seamless artistry. He is also an active arranger and editor, often creating specific arrangements to enhance each program. William will explore Matthew's background to understand how he gained prominence in the choral world. As is William's style, we hear directly from the artist, not the interviewer. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It helps the algorithm find and disseminate AMC presents. Now here's William and Matthew.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Well, it's good to meet you.
Likewise. Thanks for taking some time to chat.
Welcome to A Grilling by AtlantaMusicCritic.com. I think you may know that I'm a psychologist.
I did not know that, but I guess I'm in for a real treat.
And so that is kind of what's behind my desire to learn about what it is in someone's background that helped them become the accomplished musician that they are.
Mhm.
So that means, of course, we'll begin by talking about your background. By the way, you're in where right now?
Right now, I'm up in Maine,
Okay.
which is why you kind of see the kind of wood and pine trees and stuff. But I'm from Atlanta, so originally that's my hometown. But we actually live outside of New York now.
Where did you live when you were in Atlanta?
I grew up in Cobb County in Marietta, and then we lived in the Decatur, Highlands, Lake Claire area for 17 years.
What was it like for you growing up in those two rather affluent Georgia towns?
When I was growing up, it was very much out in the suburbs where I grew up. There was a ton of development over the course of my childhood there. But I just kind of grew up in a classic, southern subdivision. Went to public school and on the school bus when I was a kid. It didn't feel remarkable or unremarkable anyway. It just felt normal to me.
When did you become interested in music?
Well, I got involved in theater first, I would say. I started doing plays, fourth, fifth grade, middle school. I got very into theater in high school, and I didn't start singing in a choir until my junior year in high school. I played trumpet as a kid, which was an important musical experience, I think. My mom was a musician. She's a piano teacher, and I definitely rebelled against that because the teacher was in the house. I'm not a good pianist. I wish I were a good pianist. I wish I had not rebelled. But it's when your mom wants something really badly for you, there's sometimes a desire to not do that thing.
You went to high school in Atlanta?
I did. And my high school choral director, Pam Elrod, at the time, had moved to Atlanta to sing with Robert Shaw because he was still the emeritus conductor of the symphony and still was doing his chamber singers. And so that's why she was there. So I definitely got thrown into pretty intense choral culture junior year in high school. But I went to college thinking I was going to do more acting still. In my freshman year in college, I joined a 60 voice choir with a fantastic conductor. And that's when I really, I think, realized that I loved unaccompanied choral music so much.
Did you ever actually sing under the directorship of Robert Shaw?
No, I did not. I was in a musical with his son, so I met him several times, but no, I never sang with him.
Then you went to college. Anything after that?
Well, in college, I sang very much in a very serious classical group my freshman year. And then my sophomore through senior years, I was in an a cappella group, a 12-man a cappella group that rehearsed every day and performed about 100 concerts a year and toured the world every summer. So I went on 3 6-continent world tours with that group. And I was the director of that group. And that's really, I think, developed an unhealthy belief that that's the way life should be. Like directing a group every day and traveling around performing them was absolutely amazing experience, totally life-changing experience. So that was incredibly formative for me. But then after college, I did not go directly into music. I didn't even major in music in college. I took music classes, but I majored in political science. And then I went to law school for a year, went to business school, actually finished business school, and then spent some time as a management consultant in private sectors. It took a while for me to get back to where I really wanted to be. But after about 10 years post-college, I got to the point where just singing in a choir, we were actually singing at St. Philip's Cathedral in Atlanta. My wife and I were singing in the schola there, which is a very nice choir, but that wasn't enough.
Did you have any formal education beyond the bachelor's degree?
I have an MBA. No, it's unusual, actually. That training has been helpful in its uniqueness because not many people who are in professional music, running rehearsals and facilitating professional music have an MBA. It's kind of unusual.
And oftentimes there's no business training at all, MBA or
Right.
otherwise.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's really unfortunate that there's not more practical training on what it means to be a career in music, have a career in music, because you are your own business, really.
When you went on the European tours, anything particularly stick out in your head about any one of them?
To 6 continents every summer. So we would start off in Japan and then go to China and then go to Australia. I mean, and I'd been to one country. I'd been to the UK, is where the country I'd been outside the US before that. And then suddenly I went to like 27 countries in 3 years. So that was a pretty phenomenal window into the world. Everything about that was just really mind-blowing. Different cultures, diversity of peoples, of geography, extreme wealth, extreme poverty, just everything. I mean, we saw all kinds of stuff that I did not see growing up in suburban Atlanta.
Were there any marked differences that you noticed between audiences among the various locales you performed?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, there were people who were very enthusiastic everywhere. So there's just natural cultural differences, but we were very much an American group with American college brand name, and so places that were really into American culture, like Japan, were very enthusiastic. The European audience is a bit more subdued, I would say, because we were a bit less unique in what we were doing there, I would say, but still like very, very appreciative.
I know you talked about having the professional career as a management consultant, and you felt that you needed to get back to what you really enjoy. Is there a moment that light bulb went on in your head and said, gosh, I got to make a change? Or was it festering, kind of like an open wound or something?
That's a good question. I don't think there was a specific moment. I think it was a gradual realization. I think I had this thought that I would always eventually get around to going back and focusing on music and starting something musical. But I had this very linear path in my head of, I'll get a job in consulting, and then at some point maybe we'll start a business and we'll grow that, and then we'll sell it, and then we'll have money, and then we'll be able to focus on music. And I think what I realized was that linear path was not, it might have been realistic, but it would have been a very long path to get to the end point. And I didn't want to wait. Convinced my employer to give me a year of being part-time, where I took a couple of 2.5-month leaves of absence. I was doing some work that was very intense project work, so you couldn't work 3 days a week on that work, but you could take some time off between projects. And so I did that and got back into conducting. I put together a little pickup group of some friends from college and from the Cathedral Atlanta, and got together and rehearsed and performed a program at the end of one of those 2-month leaves of absence. My thought was I was going to videotape myself and maybe apply to grad school in conducting and see if I could go that path. And there were some folks in that group that weekend who had doctorates, DMAs in vocal performance or music. And their advice was, you could do that. You could go back to school and get a degree and spend 2 years, or you could just kind of start doing this. And if people will sing for you, then you're going to learn as you do it. And so I did that again during the next leave of absence. So I had 2 attempts during that year. And then about that same time, my wife actually started a different business that's in a totally different world, but a for-profit business that makes sunglasses for kids. And so I was actually able to help work on that with her and also start Skylark in parallel. And so build kind of a life and career at the same time, as opposed to this linear path I had in my head.
When you created Skylark, did you have a business plan and all of that stuff that your MBA would probably tell you is a good idea? Or did you just gather a bunch of talented folks, talented vocalists, and you said, let's just go with this and see where it goes?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's definitely more the latter. I would say only now in Skylark's history and trajectory do I feel like we have a really strong business plan and vision and thought for the next 5 or 10 years. It definitely started off as gosh, I want to be doing this. I want to start doing this and just see what happens. I didn't even actually, frankly, realize what my main job was as artistic director and how I could be most valuable for 3 or 4 years. And actually, it was this program that we just recorded on this album that we're going to talk about. We first performed that program in 2015. And that was the program where I kind of realized that my primary job as artistic director with really fantastically talented musicians is not to tell them how to perform or to really be any kind of maestro or someone to bring stunning insights in the moment of rehearsal or in the concert. My job really is to program music and put together concerts and experiences that are worthy of their interest and passion. And if you get the right people in the room and you have music or a project that's really worth digging into, that's where the magic happens. It's because these people are so talented and have so much experience to bring to bear. It's more about their focus and concentration and energy and care than it is about anything that I can bring. And that was a really interesting insight.
Hi, it's Alex again. I must interrupt this incredible interview for a few reminders. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Those are simple steps for you, but giant steps for us in spreading the word about our channel. Also, go to www.patreon.com/Atlanta Music Critic to become a patron at any level. Now, back to William and Matthew.
Do you have choral heroes?
I certainly have a hard time divorcing myself from my background as in the Robert Shaw world in the 90s. I definitely watched a lot of the workshop videos from Carnegie Hall that he did in his late career. And the thing about his work that's so in those workshops that I find so compelling is it's just the way that he's thought so deeply about music and all the almost spiritual component of it. Whereas the way he's remembered and a lot of the things that people know about him are for rehearsal tricks and for his methodology to get a choir of 100 people who may not all be at a particularly high level to sound really good. And that's kind of his legacy, I think, largely are those tricks. And those are still highly relevant and very helpful in a certain context, but those methods and tricks are not helpful at all in what we do with Skylark. We just don't, that path to polish music is not the way we approach it. So I think that he's a hero on the level that it's part of my background. And I think the way he spoke about music and his writings about music are really wonderful. But that's probably the closest thing. I mean, there are certain groups out there that perform really well that I really enjoy listening to. The group in the UK called Tenebrae, I feel like is really just fantastic. The level of precision that they bring to their work. And I've gone to watch them rehearse and seen them perform it many times.
Do you have choral composers that you feel a particular affinity for?
Yeah, I mean, I like all kinds of music, and I really like putting together programs that have a variety of styles and idioms. But I'm pretty drawn to based on the time period from 1850 to 1950, I would say. I have a late Romantic, early 20th century. We end up doing a lot of music from that era, probably because I grew up with a grandfather who was in a big band, and I listened to a lot of like 1940s music growing up, and I feel like that's a kind of a direct connection back to that time period. We have done now, this will be our fourth time this year, approaching the all-night vigil of Rachmaninoff, so 1915. I actually did my own new edition of that score based on the autographed manuscript from the museum in Moscow with a Russian-American soprano who did the diction, worked with me in the diction. So that's an area that I'm really passionate about. Poulenc, I love. We've done multiple Poulenc pieces. Brahms, I love. But I also really appreciate, really early polyphony. We did a concert this year in New York City of all early Spanish music, and that was really mind-blowing. And I also like brand new stuff. We've done Path of Miracles, which is a piece by Joby Talbot, who's a contemporary composer, twice now, and that ranks up there as some of my top musical experiences. So
you do have this new CD that came out. Talk a bit about that.
So this album is structured around doing a recording of a piece written in 1943 in occupied France by Francis Poulenc. It's called Figure Humaine. It is a really difficult piece of music. It's one of the choral Mount Everests. It has a double choir in 6 parts each, so there's 12 different vocal parts. It's quite melodically and harmonically complex, and these 2 choirs go back and forth a lot. And so you have to pick up your note sometimes out of the air from what came from a different choir. And it feels sometimes like jumping onto a moving train, trying to sing it. So it's notable on many levels. Notable because it's difficulty, because of when it was written, and also just the impact of the music and the poetry. And I wanted us to perform that piece. The problem of that piece is it's only about 20 minutes long. It's maybe 21, 22 minutes. It's 8 movements. And it's so difficult to mount a performance that you have to rehearse it for a long time. But it's only 20 minutes long. So how do you create a concert experience that's not just 20 minutes, that gives an audience but more of a concert length experience, but also have enough time to rehearse this poulenc and perform it well? That was a real challenge. And that is what prompted this idea of taking music from the American Civil War era, a different time of war, 80 years before, and music that's simpler, easier to engage with, easier on the ears for an audience who's not necessarily versed in Poulenc's music, easier on the brains of our singers, for whom figure-men is one of the real mental challenges. And to create a program where we would go back and forth between those two different idioms and make a statement on humanity's ability to respond to darkness and violence with beauty and art. And that is what we did with this program. Originally performed in 2015. We did it again in 2017. We toured it to New York and Washington, and then we recorded it and released it this year.
I was wondering whether, in fact, the copy that I received, the tracks were out of order, but in fact, it was an intentional design to break up the poulenc from the other pieces.
Absolutely, yeah. And that was really a concert convention, but we decided to release the album in that way as well. Obviously, in the world of Spotify or in Apple Music now, anybody who wants to hear the poulenc straight through can very easily do that. You don't have to listen to it the way that it was broken up. But we were very intentional about the flow of the program and how it works. The poulenc harmony and this choice of keys is really important in that piece, I believe. Because of that, we always chose Civil War songs that would not break the harmonic flow of the poulenc movements. So after movement 1, the Civil War song that comes right in B minor, just the way the first movement of the poulenc ends. So we're not messing with the way that the harmonic progression works. We also chose Civil War songs where the text of the Civil War song tries to have a pretty direct connection to the poetry of the poulenc movement that came before. So there's a dialogue between the two different musical styles on the same subject. For example, movement 2 of the poulenc is this really horrific scene of young women running around a battlefield cleaning up after a battle. Just disgusting, horrifying images in the poetry, and it's a battlefield after a battle. And after that, we have a Civil War song that was a parlor song written during the Civil War called Break It Gently to My Mother, which takes the words of a soldier who was dying in the field at Gettysburg after the battle and makes it into a song. And so we have that directly after that movement. And so we tried to have all those connections similar like that.
The Civil War songs, well, I love the whole thing. Civil War songs were particularly impactful for me, given the status of all the things that are going on in the world. Lamenting and lamentation is relevant no matter which year it happens in, and horror is horror. So very powerful, very powerful.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks very directly to me too. Now, obviously, being an American who grew up with speaking English and with an understanding of the Civil War, that speaks very implicitly directly to me. These folk melodies, hymn melodies are very simple, easy to engage with, and are an idiom that I really get. But for someone who is a native French speaker who understands the importance of the poetry of Paul Éluard, like the poulenc can have a direct impact. And I think that having these two different time periods and styles in dialogue speaks to the universality, the fact that there's humans all over the world, and even now, as you say, who are responding to utter tragedy.
How did the recording come about? Did you call somebody and say, hey, I want to record, or did somebody call you? How did that work?
Well, we now have done, I would think, 10 or 11 albums since 2014 with Skylark. So we probably do about one per year. we are the driving force behind all of them. We have released some on the Sono Luminous label, so in collaboration with the label. We do some self-released, but it's part of our mission and our business model is to get together and do recordings and try to put our music out into the world that way every year or two. The first performance was 2015. We did it again 2017. I wasn't ready to record it right away because it's so difficult. You want to make sure you have enough time to really do it justice. We had plans to do this project in May of 2020, and then obviously that didn't happen. So we ended up rescheduling it, and we did the recording last summer, so summer of 2023, and released it this year. We got together for a project. I think it was a 10-day project, which is long on the long side for us. We rehearsed for 4 days. We did 2 concerts in the New York area and on Cape Cod. Then we recorded for 4 days. And then we had 2 final concerts in Boston. By the end of it, we had performed it 4 times and spent 4 days recording it. So that last performance was pretty solid.
Where was it recorded, actually?
It's recorded at a church outside of Boston called the Church of the Redeemer that we have used for a lot of our recordings. It's just a wonderful acoustic for choral music, and it's about the right size for the size group we typically have, which is usually 16 to 18 for a recording. We had 18 in this recording. So it's a room that creates a really beautiful sound, but it's not so cavernous that it gets lost. It still stays very present.
Do you find yourself having to adjust your conducting style or music leadership style because of the auditorium and acoustic you're in?
Absolutely. Yeah. It can be very striking. It's very obvious as a conductor of a group of the caliber of Skylark when the group can hear each other or when they can't. And when the group can hear each other, my job it's almost like riding a wave. It's almost like surfing slightly ahead of the sound that's already exists. You can kind of identify that the sound is there, and I'm just kind of vaguely shaping it or trying to push and pull a little bit. And when they can't hear each other, my job is to facilitate them knowing what to do when. And those are very different sensations.
Does the second become less musical?
Well, it certainly feels like it is sometimes. Sometimes the performances actually end up being really polished. As long as you've rehearsed it enough, even if they can't hear more than a voice or two, if there's enough muscle memory and understanding of what we were doing, they will deliver a performance at a very high level still. They just won't know how high level it is. And sometimes terror from not being able to hear engenders a very high degree of concentration around timing and entrances and cutoffs that creates incredibly clean performances. They just aren't as emotionally satisfying to deliver as the ones where you can actually feel the sound of, and you can feel the moments together. And the right mix is the good acoustic that's not too big, but with a big enough audience that engenders that concentration. And some of our best performances have been a lot live concerts and great acoustics with really engaged audiences where you have the best of both those worlds. The room is really part of our instrument as an a cappella choral ensemble. It's almost like the soundboard of a piano. And if you take the best pianist in the world and set that person down at a slightly out of tune upright piano with a broken soundboard, it's just not going to sound that great. It's the same thing. If you take 16 professional vocalists at the top of their game into a room with carpet on the floor or on the walls and the ceiling, like it's not going to sound that great.
Right.
So it's a really important choice for us is the acoustic, and it can have a remarkable impact on everyone's experience of the performance where we actually are.
If I wanted to join Skylark tomorrow, how would I do that?
Join as a singer in the group?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a roster of about 30 artists from across the country that we draw from for every project. And we have a lot of continuity in that roster. We have people who've been singing with us for 10, 11, 12 years on that roster. We do take auditions or applications to be added to the roster primarily as a sub. And we take that on a rolling basis. So we're always looking for new voices to add to the fold. That's you submit some recordings and references to us, and our ensemble manager will take a listen to those and talk to me about it and If we think that someone has a really good top possible fit for us, we'll put them on the sub list. And the next time we have an opening, there might be a chance to call that person in. That's generally how people first have their experience when we have an opening at the last minute, usually, because we plan our seasons 12 to 18 months in advance, and we offer contracts to our roster first and try to balance opportunities across the ensemble. And we try to be really loyal to our people, because the sense of community and trust that comes from a lot of singing together is impossible to replace.
When you have a performance coming up, do you solicit from your network of singers who's available, or do you first make assignments and then any position you don't have filled, you send it out to people to say, hey, I'm ready?
We'll look at this last season as an example. So I think we had 5 planned project weeks for the 23-24 season. And so 6 or 9 months before the start of that season, our ensemble manager and I sat down and looked at the programs and looked at our roster and tried to assign people to programs that we thought they would be a good fit, either vocally or because they loved repertoire or because of schedule, a variety of factors, and offered contracts to our roster. And then if people are not available, we'll offer to somebody else and try to fill out the spaces. And we had those all done probably 6 months before the season started. Then we also had 3 additional projects come up during the course of the season. They came up on pretty short notice. Those one of them was a big piece that we'd done before with an 18-voice roster. So the first thing we did with that was we looked at the possible dates and we surveyed those 18 people and tried to get the date that would get the best mix and the most of those people. I think we had 14 on the date that we chose, so we had to find 4 additional people to fill those spots. Another program we chose based on whether we thought they would be really good at singing a particular repertoire with a guitar in this venue. So it kind of depends. But we did have, I want to say, 3 or 4 people who we had not had sing with us before join us during those 3 kind of last minute projects, because the nature of the beast, people were committed, and that's kind of where we get new people in.
Is there anything else you want to add that you might think our viewers would be interested in?
I don't think so. I mean, this has been an interesting conversation, very personal. I would say I think the album is really worth listening to, and I'm happy to get the word out about it. If Poulenc and more songs and really heavy stuff is not your cup of tea, we have a variety of types of recordings out there. So we have a couple of really fun recordings with a narrator that has live story being told with music interspersed and behind the narrative. We had an album from a couple of years ago that's basically a Paris-themed cabaret that's a mixture of classical music and also jazz and like mid-century Edith Piaf type stuff. So we have a wide range of music.
Well, it was great meeting you.
Likewise. Thanks so much for your time.
And great conversation. I appreciate your openness.
Of course. No, it's fun. Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Talk to you again.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you, William and Matthew. It's always remarkable how William guides interviewees to share their stories so naturally, all while keeping the spotlight on them. His approach is seamless and never intrusive. And who wouldn't be inspired by Matthew's unwavering dedication to choral music? It's clear that his passion for Skylark is not just a profession, but a calling. You can truly feel his excitement in every word. Our community on youtube.com/Atlanta Music Critic continues to grow, and we need your help to keep that momentum going. Here are 2 simple ways you can support us. The first is to like and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps us reach more classical music lovers. The second is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/Atlanta Music Critic. Join the ranks of esteemed supporters like composer Deborah Kay and producer Jim Ginsberg in fueling high-quality interviews and unique insights into the classical music world. As our channel continues to feature the best in classical music, exciting times are ahead. William will soon be sitting down with a renowned violinist, a trailblazing microtonalist, and a rising star in conducting to learn more about them and how they got to be where they are today. You won't want to miss these conversations. Lastly, don't forget to visit skylarkensemble.org to learn more about Matthew and Skylark's inspiring work. And now, before we go, enjoy this special treat, excerpts from some of Skylark's most compelling recordings.
He's trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His true